culturally, we're a long way away from thinking that war is going to be part of our lives. And this is really challenging because war is now part of our lives and we're just riding our luck and hoping it doesn't happen.
Now, the Ministry of Defence has unveiled a new military intelligence service to counter foreign threats. The level of hostile activity against the MOD and the Army, including spying, hacking and physical threats, has jumped by more than 50% in the last year. It comes as NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte had another stark warning for Europe.
Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured. It is a terrible thought. But if we deliver on our commitments, this is a tragedy we can prevent.
And just a few lines coming in the last few hours. Ukrainian, European and US national security advisors have been speaking today. President Zelensky is heading to Berlin for talks on Monday. And of course, the Times has been reporting that normal government business has effectively been put on hold at Downing Street, the French Elysee and the German Chancellery. So there is a lot to discuss. General Sir Richard Barrons, former commander of Joint Forces Command, is on the line now. General Sir Richard, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, let's start with this new military intelligence service even. What is it going to do that MI6, 5, GCHQ don't?
So really what we're seeing here is a relabeling of the intelligence architecture within the Ministry of Defence. So it doesn't actually affect the intelligence agencies, MI5, SIS and GCHQ. They report respectively to the Home Office and the Foreign Office. So we're talking about the defence stuff within the MOD. And what this reorganisation and relabeling does is connect together the bits that sit in the Ministry of Defence and those things that are part of the Army, Navy and Air Force into a more cohesive organisation, which is the right thing to do.
I mean, it feels part of a kind of general tooling up across Europe, a sense that we're already at war in a sort of hybrid context. Drones in European aerospace, all these Belarusian balloons over Lithuania, cyber attacks and so on, and these mysterious fires all over the place. Do you feel that that is where we're at, that we're gearing up for something around the corner that could be far more challenging?
So I think the evidence and the analysis is really clear now. Russia, President Putin particularly, does see himself at war with Europe and the West. He believes he can drive a wedge between the US and Europe to his great advantage. And the way that war has expressed itself is most often below the threshold of military conflict. So that's cyber, a bit of sabotage where it affects European support to Ukraine, and an awful lot of messing about in social media to try and destabilize how we think about our lives and our place in the world. And the balloons into European aerospace, those are all simply attempts to try and destabilize and worry people about the world that live in. So really, none of that is new now. What the choice is can we put a cap on this? Can we reset the relationship with Russia through deterrence, which is what the NATO Secretary is talking about, or do we continue to ignore these events below the threshold of conflict and run the risk of Russia miscalculating or acting with greater aggression and bringing war to Europe in the way that Mr. Rutte has described? That would be a disaster.
Well, in reality, we're not ready for that potential disaster, are we? That, Russia could well launch a full-scale war in Europe, and we're just simply not prepared for that, are we?
So you're absolutely right. Europe isn't prepared for war in the way that war would come to us. But we should recognize that Russia's army is entirely consumed at the minute with its intervention in Ukraine, and it still retains a powerful air force and missile forces and cyber forces. But we need to remember that the European economy at $20 trillion a year compared to Russia's economy of about $2.5 trillion a year means that making some quite sensible but early choices to spend our money differently will very easily reset that balance. And that should be the objective, to make sure that we make choices quickly to deter Russia from thinking that it can continue to irritate what is really its much bigger and wealthier neighbour.
Making choices quickly is such a well-chosen phrase. And when you look at what's happening with those frozen Russian assets, the EU is still talking. They're not doing anything quickly about that, are they? Russian officials now planning to sue, or they are actually suing the Belgian bank Euroclear, which holds these frozen funds. Does that give you any qualms about the legality of spending those frozen assets, distributing them to Ukraine? Or do you think that actually we've done what is intended and given Russia itself pause for thought?
So I think we should look at the, if you like, the morality of this as much as the legality. So Ukraine is quite close to running out of money. It needs about $159 billion over the next 2 years to continue to run the country and to resist Russia. One way of finding that sort of money is to take the $180 billion of Russian money that is sitting frozen in Europe. And there is something, I think, quite satisfying about using Russian money to help Ukraine fight Russia and to repair itself. And the alternative is, from this $20 trillion European economy, we find it in another way, because the US isn't going to do it.
So we face down the legal threats then?
So, well, if you just have to find the right lawyers to face down any legal threat, it seems to me. So there appears to be a very plausible legal case for doing this. We have to recognise that we can't just put the whole problem in Belgium's lap, because that's where a lot of the money sits, and they're looking for their allies to help protect them against a legal challenge in the future. That seems to be fair.
You know, just going back to NATO boss Mark Rutte's comments about being prepared for a war on a scale that our grandparents experienced. Are Britons, do you think, psychologically prepared for such a thing? Are we, we've talked about the financing, but are Britons in that mentality, that mindset that we might have to really make some sacrifices, some big sacrifices?
So I think it's clear that as a nation, we're really not, because if we were, we would have seen different choices in the recent budget. We have just all chosen through that budget to put more of our taxes and borrowing into the things we like more, like welfare. What we decided we weren't going to do is to put more money into, for example, implementing the Strategic Defence Review, which I was one of the co-leaders, because that review is currently being implemented at about half the pace the risks suggest that we should really go at. And that's a matter of choice. So we're not prepared to make these spending decisions because we don't feel frightened enough, unlike our neighbours in Germany and Poland and the Baltic states. And also culturally, we're a long way away from thinking that war is going to be part of our lives. And this is really challenging, because war is now part of our lives, and we're just riding our luck and hoping it doesn't happen now.
Fascinating to hear your take on that and the budget as well. Just one final thought in that same context. There was a government war book which was shelved at the end of the Cold War, but it was this document that outlined the transition from peace to war. Do we need to have a new one, basically?
So I think a new one is being written, and that's a good and necessary thing. But if you're going to write a transition to war book like that, you've got to bring civil society and business and institutions with you. So in the review, we call for a national debate about the world we find ourselves in, and what we all need to do as citizens to play our part in case we have to mobilise. And that discussion is absolutely not happening yet.
General Sir Richard Barrons, great to have your thoughts as ever. Thank you very much.